order to do a waist to hip ratio, you have to take the measurements of your waist. Should be 28, and then you take the measurement of your hip, and that is 36, and then you divide the waist by the hip, and in my case you get 0.8. Anatomical position is where you're standing erect, your palms are facing forward, all limbs are extended, and the fingers are together. Okay, the waist is superior to the foot, the ankle is inferior to the knee joint, the patella is located on the anterior side, the scapula is located on the posterior side, the pinky is more medial than the thumb, and the radius is more lateral than the ulna. The humerus is more proximal than the radius and ulna. The tibia is more distal from the femur. The rectus femoris is more superficial from the femur, and the humerus is more deep than the biceps brachii. The sagittal plane divides into right and left halves. The frontal plane divides into anterior and posterior parts, and then the transverse divides into superior and inferior. The medial-lateral axis runs horizontally side to side and is perpendicular to the sagittal plane. The anteroposterior axis runs horizontally front to back and is perpendicular to the frontal plane. And the superior-inferior runs up and down and is perpendicular to the transverse plane. The center of mass is near the hip bones, and all of the cardinal planes, the sagittal, frontal, and transverse planes, pass through it. The motions in the sagittal plane are flexion, extension, hyperextension, which I can't do but is going past the normal range of motion, plantar flexion, and dorsiflexion. The motions in the frontal plane include abduction, adduction, elevation of the scapula, depression of the scapula, inversion, eversion, ulnar and radial deviation, and then lateral flexion. The motions in the transverse plane are rotation to the right, rotation to the left, external rotation, internal rotation, protraction, retraction, pronation, and supination. Motions that occur in multiple planes are circumduction, and then supination and pronation. Serving a tennis ball is a close skill because it's done under a standard environment. Fielding a baseball under competition is an open skill because the environment is constantly changing. Jumping from one spot to another can be considered motion because it is change in position with respect to spatial and temporal frames of reference. Pushing a box in one direction is translational motion because it's moving in one plane and all the system is moving in one direction at the same time. Throwing a ball in a straight line is rectilinear translation because the system is moving in a straight line. Throwing a ball on a curved manner is curvilinear translation because the system follows a curved line. Swinging a bat is rotational motion because the system is restricted to spin around one axis. Walking is a general motion because it's a combination of translation and rotation. Throwing a football is a discrete skill because it has a definite beginning and definite end. Running is a continuous skill because it doesn't have a definitive beginning or end. Gymnastics is a serial skill because it may appear to be continuous, but is really a combination of discrete skills. Kicking a ball can be a simple kinetic chain because it has no more than 2 linkages. Jumping up to catch a ball is a complex kinetic chain because it has more than 2 linkages, and the power starts through the legs, travels through the torso, and up through the arms. Doing a tricep extension is an open kinetic chain because the most distal part is free to move. Doing a squat is a closed kinetic chain because the most distal segment is stationary.